Everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Cornwall Umpires Association weekly Zoom clinic. My name is Jake Samp. I work with Connor Singheisen. Contact information is here. If you guys got any questions, as always, feel free to jump in, put them in the chat window, anything like that, and we'll try to help answer questions. This is our usual disclaimer. We are not experts by any means, but we do these clinics to make us better and help spread our knowledge and experience and help umpires in the Midwest. We do these every week. Let us know if you have any topics that you want us to cover. We like feedback. The past couple of weeks, we've been going off of a couple of things that we get from the NCAA as far as some of their interpretations, guidelines, and we've kind of been able to tailor and modify that more toward the amateur umpire. And what I mean by the amateur umpire is the umpire that's not working in college or professional baseball. So we're going to continue our discussion on pre-pitch. And this week, as I just mentioned, was very much decided. We decided to do this topic based on an email, the short essay from NCAA umpire named Bill McCollum, I believe, right, Connor? And so, but it was titled The Thinking Umpire. And I'm going to pause, share. There it is. And just a couple excerpts from it. So since umpiring successfully relies heavily on the following good habits, I spend a lot of time in my teaching on what I consider to be some habits for success. One of those habits is something that one would consider to be quite obvious. However, like most positive behavioral patterns, this one requires discipline and concentration to create. It is no coincidence that the best umpires follow the simple habit of thinking ahead. This is where we start talking about pre-pitch. Anticipating the application of certain rules would be a big part of this behavior, but there's more. Understanding your responsibilities and positioning yourself accordingly prior to any pitch will dramatically influence your outcomes. Consider that being in the right spot for any decision to be made largely depends on where you started and what you were focused on. The count, how many outs there are, the position of the fielders, and what the players are trying to accomplish all play into your initial actions and then reactions. Even a sudden line drive can catch an umpire by surprise and out of position. In addition to your starting position, you must focus on where you will be going. You may have to read the ball, the players, or the movement of your partners. During the development of any play, there is an ideal destination that will allow for any necessary adjustment. Failure to quickly get to that initial spot will diminish your chance for proper adjustment. In today's game of swipe tags, adjustments are necessary on most plays. It is important to understand this is not just a once in a while, quote, bear down on the important ones mentality. This must be automatic behavior. The best umpires do this all the time, every time, and one mental lapse can turn a game on its head. The good news about habits is that when you have good ones, they set you up to win. Learning patterns of behavior that lead to great outcomes is worth the time and practice. Once a good habit is established, you can rely on it, and that allows you to focus on the action. Keeping your head up all the time, another great habit, and staying engaged will help maximize your performance if you ever find yourself on autopilot or being caught by surprise. Challenge yourself to think ahead, umpire smart, and have a great season. That was distributed to all NCAA, NJCAA umpires, and I believe NAIA umpires last week. And in it, McCallum talks about anticipation. And that's what really spawned the idea to talk about pre-pitch and what specifically pre-pitch is. I'm willing to bet that I pre-pitch differently than Connor does. than Dan does, than a lot of other umpires. So the first kind of question that I had put forward when I was outlining this section of this week's clinic is, how often should I pre-pitch? And I think the article that I just read from did a very good job of explaining that pre-pitch is essential to every pitch. But I would take it a little bit further and say that the way that you pre-pitch is going to depend on a lot of different things. Some things can be, what is the count? What is the position of the runners, score, and things of that nature. You know, if a base is loaded with 2 outs and a 3-2 count, you know that possibly a breaking pitch is coming. It could be in the dirt. Well, we need to prepare for a drop third strike. So pre-pitch every pitch. I guess what a good pre-pitch looks like is very similar to kind of how I pre-pitch. And I'll have Dan and Connor and anybody else on here that wants to kind of share their thoughts on this. The way that I pre-pitch for a new hitter, my first cue is I'm going to look and see what signals the catcher's giving. If the catcher's making any movements to the defense or the bench, depending on the level, that's something that I'm going to take note of. Then I'm going to read my outfielders. My outfielders are playing back. Well, that indicates that this hitter probably has some pop to a swing. If they're playing in a little bit, you know, that makes a difference. Are they shading to one side of the field or not? Do we have the shift? Then I'm going to remember how many outs we have. Then I'm going to think, clean hit to the outfield. This is what I'm going to do. If we got a ball that's in the infield, I'm doing this. And by that point in time, after I've gone through it, usually the pitcher's getting ready. Then in my head, I say, all right, he's on the rubber. And then I go, all right, set. And then I lock in for the pitch as the base umpire. I should have clarified. That's what I do as a base umpire. As the plate umpire, I would basically think to myself, okay, we have, this is the situation. Fielders are doing this. Okay, he's on the rubber. All right, catcher set, batter set. All right, everything's good. And then he starts his motion, and then lock in for the pitch. Connor, Dan, anybody else?
From the base umpire standpoint, Dan, go ahead.
One of the things that I've noticed as I get to the higher levels is third base coaches are starting to signal, in essence, empty signals more. But it's still the case that when the situation, the at-bat presses on a little bit, it gets a little deeper, you start seeing more activity on that. And what that tells you is they're trying to hit a different direction. They're trying to do something with this at-bat. I had a conversation yesterday working a couple of days ago with the Gophers. They almost never bunt before they see a strike, but you can't necessarily completely count on that. But if you're thinking along with the coaches, along with the players, and you're seeing what your corner infielders are doing, it can help you help your first step to be a little better. There's no such thing in a high-level umpire in anticipation. You do not anticipate a play. It'll kill you if you do, because you'll go to the wrong spot. And, the quote that Jeff Nelson put in the book, "As they see them," and if you haven't read it, you have to. It's simply a fantastic explanation of what it looks like to become an umpire, pro or even at the college ranks. But Jeff Nelson said, when the players do what they're supposed to, when they do what the game requires, we almost never make a mistake. It's when they go beyond that, they try to make that advanced throw at third base instead of the easy out at first. You got to umpire your way through that. And it makes it a lot more, there's a lot more opportunities for you to be in the wrong position. And the point that McCallum makes that you got to take to bed is, no matter what you're thinking, you got to let your feet go where the play goes. But I always look at the corner infielders. I want to see how close they're playing. If the middle infielders are playing double play depth, it changes a little bit about this at bat. It's going to go a little differently. One more thing I look at in the outfield, particularly as a base umpire, is which glove hand because it makes a difference in terms of which way that outfield is going to turn. And if I'm thinking about that and how deep they are and how maybe they're shading, I'm starting to think along with the at bat. You're never going to read the same as the pitchers or the batters are doing, but the more information you plug in, the better your feet are going to go on that first step. And that's what matters. You have to be ready to adjust to it. But if your first step is good, you're making up ground the right way, game gets a lot easier.
I don't have anything to add to that.
No, I like the addition that he made about determining what glove hand we have. You know, I always want to know what hand my pitcher throws with, especially if we have a new pitcher. One thing I'll do first time I go into the infield working area, I'll always, tap. I got a left-handed pitcher, I'll just tap my arm like this, just to let my plate umpire know, hey, remember we got a left-handed pitcher here. So there's a couple different blocks that we need to be a little bit more aware of. And yeah, I'd say when we get runners on base, then we need to look at double play depth. Are we going to be looking at a bunt run, squeeze play? But as Dan said, anticipation kills you. But being able to react accordingly is a skill. I think it comes down to some kind of muscle memory. Like you see a ground ball to the shortstop. I know that I'm taking 4 steps in if I'm in the A position, and I'm going to get stopped and set. So ground ball short, see it. Okay, 4 steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop, set. All right, boom, call it out. So it helps with reaction. It definitely does. I'll say 2-umpire system. My pre-pitch is a lot more general because I work so many games in the 2-umpire system. I think when I switch into the 3-umpire system or system I'm less familiar with, there's a lot more that I would pre-pitch on because there isn't the familiarity with the 3-umpire system as opposed to the 2-umpire system. So that kind of wraps up what I had written down as far as pre-pitch. Do we have any questions on pre-pitch, why we pre-pitch, how we pre-pitch? Seeing
If you're the plate umpire, make sure you're giving pre-pitch signals to your partner for every at bat or every change of situation. That's the one big thing I think. As newer umpires, as amateur umpires, we just assume we know what's going to happen. We just assume we know what our partner is going to do. And a lot of times that hangs us out to dry. Where if we get pre-pitch signals, we're letting our partner know what we are doing, and hopefully they are in turn letting us know what they are doing. Now, obviously, situations are going to dictate different movements, but if we know what our signals mean, if I plate umpires, if I'm going like this, no outs, I'm going to third, that's all on a clean base hit. Or that's all when the situation warrants that. Now, if I do that and my partner goes out, guess where I have to go? Wherever I need to go in order to umpire the play that's going to happen. So pre-pitch signals between partners and that communication really helps make sure that we are covering what we need to cover.
Couple quick points on that, Connor. He's dead right. I always like, particularly on a 2-man, I want to see the plate guy start that. And sometimes the plate guy's going to have to wait until the catcher clears. If you're not the tallest guy, standing behind the catcher and signaling, you might as well be facing the backstop. It doesn't make any difference. If you need to, you step out. I love watching Adam Berg. He always steps really, and then gets his signal and jumps back in. It's also okay to wait until the catcher drops and then do it. There's no hurry to get it done. But when you do it, what you're saying to your partner is, we're sharp. We're on this. We know what our obligations are going to be. And like Connor said, we can adjust if something different happens. The best umpires will tell you, we don't want to land planes. We don't want to draw attention to the signals. So if I'm doing this, pointing at third base, it's too much. You don't need that. A low key one. And then here's the thing that gets under my skin, especially when I work with guys that may be older, but haven't necessarily worked a lot of baseballs. They don't signal back. You got to mirror my signal. You got to let me know. And Connor's right. You tell me what you're doing. And if you signal back, you're engaged, you're paying attention, you're thinking about what your next steps are, and your pre-pitch now at least involves that part. At least that piece is done. So Tim Cheetah likes to say, call every pitch. You're getting paid for every pitch, so verbalize something. Now, if it's obvious and ball hit the backstop, you don't have to. But every pitch is close. Somebody's got to hear you, and it's got to be the catcher. It's got to be the batter. And the same thing for signals. If you're signaling with your partner, you're engaged, you're earning your check. So I'd strongly recommend that. And if the signals get too confusing, take a break between half innings and make sure you're on the same page. I'm obsessed with this signal. Whenever I've got runners on and there's one out and there's an opportunity for a one out time play, I'll signal it until I get it back. And I had some guys go, what the hell are you talking about? There's not two out. And I'm like, good. Next half we go and I say, if that runner from first or the runner from second tries to advance and I got that runner coming home from third, I'm going to be watching at the plate and I'm going to be watching your body language. And when that out is recorded on the trailing runner, I want to see my partner point to say that's the action that'll be an out if he keeps the baseball. Again, we're going to umpire 3 to 4 to 5 aspects of every play. I want to see you working. But the first thing that's important is as that tag is applied or as that glove hand gets in, if you're pointing and throwing out a safe, safe, you can just hit a safe. That's fine. But then keep umpiring in case he overslides. But as that happens, your signal on a safe or your point on a possible out is what's going to trigger me whether this run scores or not. And there's nothing more important in the game of baseball than boundaries and time plays. They are the things that are going to get you. Your asset is going to catch fire. Excuse my language. I forgot we're recording. Your tush is going to get on fire. No place faster than if you're out there saying, no, don't plate that run. And the video shows that you're wrong. So any level you're working at, that's the play that needs your attention. Bumping runners and time plays, man, it's where we make our money. And if you do it assertively and you're right, 80% of your arguments, 80% of the conversations that go out of hand, they're done before they start because they trust you. So signaling where you're going, signaling the time for the opportunity for an out. But then again, keep your eyes on it and see if he comes up, voluntary release, shows you the ball, tosses it. That's the last out of the inning. That's great. I'm going to then umpire the plate. I'm going to umpire whether that run scores or not. It's a big deal.
I'm a big fan of getting my pre-pitch signals out of the way early. I want to do them as early as I can because that allows me to move on to the next progression in my pre-pitch. If I get it early, I'm focused. I'm locked in on pitcher, box, batter, catcher, everybody, and there's one less thing I have to worry about because I do that. I usually do that as I'm going back to the plate. Like once I get back there, I'm 6'1". I'm a big dude. I don't hide behind catchers very often, so it's easy for me to do. But the quicker I can get that out of the way, the quicker I can progress into preparing for that next pitch.
Like what Connor said, he's 6'1" and he doesn't hide behind catchers. I'm 6'6", and I don't think I've ever hidden behind a catcher in my life. And
you just can't see your arms shake. That's the only issue we have.
Bicep curls, right?
You could hide behind a stop sign pole anyway.
But I like the idea. We want to try to get our signals out as quick as possible. I've also seen guys that will get stuck behind the catcher or hidden behind the catcher, I should say, and they'll kind of peek out from around the catcher and give the signal or whatever they're doing. That's fine in my book. The one thing that I want to really emphasize in what Dan said is make sure you signal back, but you're not signaling to confirm what your partner is doing. You're telling them what you're doing. So Dan and I are working a game. I'm on the plate. We got one out and a runner on first. I'm doing this. And that's saying on a clean hit, I'm going to third base. And Dan is going to respond back doing the same signal, but it's going to mean something different.
Yeah. It's
going to mean that I have the batter runner on a clean hit wherever. That's what that would mean in turn. And so Dan in that situation, even though he's making the same movement, the signal means something different.
Because he's pointing a different direction.
Pointing a different direction.
He's pointing at first.
I've
Heck,
actually
no.
added this signal sometimes when I'm with a newer guy and there's a signal coming from my plate guy. And let's say there's loaded bases. I got them all. So I'm literally just kind of saying, because my plate guy is going to say I'm at home because second base is covered. There's a chance of a scoring runner. And I'm going to just signal saying, I got these. That reminds me, I got a play behind me. You're always officiating the next play that's going to develop. As if you're not involved, where's the next one? There's going to be a pop throw back to second base. There's going to be a back pick at first. So I tell myself, I got bags, I got runners, I got more responsibilities. It's so important to signal what you're doing to the extent you can. But yeah, it's the more you're doing this stuff, the rules get easier, conversations get easier. It gets easier to sort of get through the day and more fun, frankly.
But one signal, I know we've kind of gone down a good rabbit hole here with signals, and because they are a part of the pre-pitch mechanics. One signal that I think gets overlooked frequently as the base umpire, especially in a bases loaded situation, or you might see this with a runner on third or runner on second and third. When you have the infield playing in, I need to know as the plate umpire where you are at in the infield working area. And so I use this signal where I just put my hand behind my head, and that tells my plate umpire, if I'm working with Dan, hey, Dan, I'm behind all the infielders. And so what that's going to tell Dan is if we have a rocket off the bat coming right up at me and I get hit, well, he knows that, okay, I started behind the fielders. So something very weird has to happen in order for us to come up and kill time for interference, or for umpire interference, I should say. So that's a signal that I don't think gets used enough. And for if I'm coming back in, say we had a pass ball and now we have no, the fielders are going back to double play depth because R1 didn't go, so we have runners on the corners. Then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this, or just give a single hand in front of the chest. That's a huge aid for the plate umpire, because I worked the game. I was my first year working college baseball. I was working a JV game at Northwestern in Iowa. And I was working with Corey Spangler. If you ever get the chance to work with him, you got to work with him. Great guy. He's got his World Series ring. I love working with Corey every chance I get. We had a laser get hit off the mound. If you've ever worked there before, you know that mound's weird. And it took a weird bounce right into me. Corey came up and called time right away. And we had all the fielders back. He knew where I was at. And he just called time right away, and we adjudicated the play properly. If I would have been further back, where we got some more question, then we really got to take our time and umpire that play. So by telling your partner where you're at in relation to your infielders, it's a huge thing that I don't think it's done enough.
Hey, Jacob.
Hey.
This is Terry Helgett from Sleepy Eye.
Yeah.
Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Couple things I think about on these last couple points is, number one, when I work two-man with a less experienced umpire, which happens a little more frequently in some with the amateur baseball, as far as if I'm working the bases, I will tell my partner, who is obviously working the plate and maybe a little less experienced, where I think he should be going on a clean base hit. And I know that contradicts what you guys were just talking about, how he'll point to third if there's, R1 only, or R1 and R3, that sort of thing. And then I'm supposed to point towards first, but really I know where I'm going. And if I'm not, and if I tell him he's going to third base on a clean hit, he should know that I'm not going there. So I don't necessarily, that's my own little thing on that. And then, and again, not that anybody else has to do it, but that's the way I look at it a little bit more. Also, when it comes to the signal, like putting your hand behind your head to indicate that you're going back behind the infielders, I don't have a problem with the mechanic of that. But I will tell people that I fight hard to never go behind the infielders if I can help it. Now, if I get hit with a line drive, so be it, and we'll adjudicate it like you said. That's just the way it is. The guy hit a rocket and it got me. But that happens so rarely. But I just don't feel it's right to always go immediately, oh, infield's up. Okay, I'm going to immediately go behind them so that I don't get hit by the ball. And now I leave all line drive trap situations to my plate umpire, who oftentimes can't find the ball until it's already too late, to help. I think that's more important. But you guys can agree or disagree with that. But that's just another thought process to maybe think about here.
I agree.
I think, Terry, I think you make two very, very good points. I think, a lot of the stuff that we're discussing here today, as we discussed when we went through the 2-umpire system mechanics last year, the mechanics book is the basement level. It's the bare minimum. I think in a certain situation, especially where we're working with a new umpire, Terry, I think that's an absolute, that's a great thought process. That's a great use of being able to go out and mentor a new umpire. When you're working the 2-umpire system and things like that. And yeah, it's definitely something to make sure that it's pre-gamed, but it's all part of pre-pitch stuff. Do you have any last comments, questions on pre-pitch? Mr. Singheisen?
All right, so pregame duties. One of the things we covered last week was and Larry brought up the point of when you check in with coaches, make sure you talk about baseballs. When I walk on the field, a couple minutes prior to the plate meeting, I will always go to the home coach and get my baseballs. And then I always ask the question, hey, Dan, do you have somebody designated to bring me baseballs if I need them? Because the last thing I want to do is slow the game down by waiting or having to go to the backstop to get them out of the tube. That's one of my pet peeves. I'm sure everybody feels a little differently. To me, that takes, in some of these fields, the backstop is a million miles away. I don't want to stop the game, run back, get baseballs, run back, and put the ball back in play if I can avoid it. So I'm always thinking ahead of how can I make the game more efficient. And a lot of times it's, hey, do you have somebody that's in charge of getting us baseballs today? Perfect. What's their name? Can you bring them over here right now so I can meet them? Because when I go to ask for baseballs, and I'll talk about that here in a couple seconds, I want to know who's bringing me baseballs, and I want to make sure they're ready. And I see a face so I can look directly at them when I ask for baseballs, and I can use their name. It's one of the biggest things I see. And this is I work with a lot of guys who go to pro school and then come back and they still have some of those pro school teaching methods of doing things that don't work in college baseball, don't work in high school baseball, and definitely don't work at the lower levels. When I want more baseballs, so I carry 2 ball bags. Everybody's a little different, but I want to, when I have two baseballs left, I'm asking for more baseballs. And I always ask for 2 more than I think I actually need. Because how many times have you all gone somewhere and said, hey, can I get 2 baseballs? And they're like, oh, we only have 1. That doesn't do us any good, right? So I always ask for a couple more than I actually need at that point in time because A, I'm probably not always going to get how many I ask for. And B, by the time that we have the next foul ball or the next opportunity for them to bring them out, it may be 2 or 3 pitches later, and we may have 2 or 3 balls fouled off. So then I have to have 2 more because they may be trying to scrounge up baseballs or trying to rub them up, trying to unwrap them while the at-bat's still going on. So I'm always going to, I have a foul ball. I'm going to turn to the dugout and be like, hey, Mike, can I get 3 baseballs, please? And always say, please. Always ask in a conversational tone. Don't just say 2 baseballs, right? I want to have a conversation. I want to establish a relationship because when I see Mike again, he's like, this guy appreciates me. He works with me. I'm going to help him out. He's not a jerk. He's very kind. He says, please, thank you. Every time I bring baseballs out, it establishes that relationship and that working relationship of we're in this together. And I'm going to set the tone with that player when I meet him. Hey, I'm Connor. Nice to meet you. Here, you'll be helping us out with baseballs today. I'll turn to the dugout. I'll use your name. I'll try to let you know how many I need. If you could just bring them out at the next time we have a foul ball or next batter, I would really appreciate it. It'll help me keep your pitcher in rhythm. Always tell them how it benefits their guys. They're going to be more likely to help you because pitchers like to be in rhythm. When they're in rhythm, they throw strikes. When they throw strikes, good things happen for baseball. So ask ahead of time, ask for a couple more than you actually need, use a first name, and please and thank you every time. We're out here working. We're not friends, but we need to have a working relationship. And a lot of that comes with that give and respect based on the titles that you have. We have professional respect and we have personal respect. We have to treat them with professional respect at all times. Personal respect is something they earn. So, yeah.
I'm going to add a couple things here, Connor. And actually, it's more of a question for you, Dan, and I'll ask this to Terry as well if he has something different. One thing that I learned, especially as a new umpire, and Connor, I'm probably going to steal a little bit of your thunder for your in-between innings, but never ask for one baseball. That was, I like 6 baseballs at all times. If I have 5, I'm not asking for a baseball. I'll start with that. But one of the worst things that we can have happen is, you start off an inning with 2 baseballs. First 2 pitches get fouled away, and now you got none left, and now you're looking for baseballs. Well, maybe 45 seconds ago, you were standing on the foul line just counting pitches. Why can't hey Mike, can I get 4 baseballs, please? Now you're starting the inning off prepared. And I know Connor's going to talk more about that later, but that's definitely something to do. Make sure you have baseballs.
Oh, that's right. Cody Lowe had a great line when he was down, just finished umpire school. He said, if I got 2 baseballs, I'm out. So stay on top of it. Keep that moving. I think Terry will acknowledge sometimes in summer, we don't have a whole lot of baseballs coming, but just stay on top of it. So it's less of a concern. That delay is just painful if you can avoid it. I'll get into the BP. It's got to be white, but all balls are going to get banged around if we've only got 4 or 5 in a summer game. So you got to make allowances, but keep them thinking about it, keep them moving on it, keep them chasing down foul balls if you can, without being confrontational. But you want to get that done because it's vital. It's part of the game.
I can't speak enough about game management and keeping baseballs in stock. I listened to the speech that Connor had last week about when you arrive at the park, and I agree wholeheartedly. He said it again today. When you get to the park, I will ask, like in an amateur game where you are, like in our parks, well, we got 4 baseballs. Okay, well, I'm going to start with those 4, but I can guarantee you I'm going to keep asking for more baseballs as the first, second, third innings go by to get me up to the 8 that I like to have to start a half inning. Now, I usually don't get that high in amateur ball, but I definitely do in the college game, where if I'm not starting a half inning with 8 baseballs on me, I feel light. I don't feel right for the reasons we just talked about. And if we're talking about amateur baseball, you need to train the teams that we're not waiting for that foul ball that's down the right field line to get thrown back into the second baseman and back to the pitcher, and use that same ball. No, we got another ball coming from my ball bag to the catcher to throw out to the pitcher while someone else retrieves that foul ball from the dugout. And, that's just part of game management, and it's so important. And I agree wholeheartedly, Connor, be polite, know that kid's name or that yesterday's pitcher that's not going to be used today, who's giving you those baseballs, know his name and use him like no other, because he is your lifeline to keeping that ball game going.
Anything else, Connor? Hearing none.
All right. So these next few slides are going to be kind of quick. So feel free to ask questions, pop in and offer some input here, because they're fairly basic concepts, right? So handling substitutions. So when we have a coach come out to make a substitution, we have to deal with last names. I'm not the greatest speller. A lot of times I will use jersey numbers and get the last name later or shorthand it to make it make sense. But what I'm going to do is, and everybody's card is going to look different. Everybody's lineup card is they're going to handle it a different way. But find a way of crossing out the individual that is no longer in the game, and then writing the new person in and what inning they came in at. To me, that's important because when they try to re-enter somebody, I can say, nope, we've already done that. Or nope, that player came in the 7th inning. Traditionally, the coach will typically know. They understand their substitutions. They have their own system. But the more detailed I can be when I record that substitution on my lineup card, the easier it is for me to tell a coach that player can't play because of XYZ. Came in the top of the 4th with 2 outs. Came into right field. However you need to do that, record it a way that makes sense, that is legible. Because if you have a suspended game, all those transactions that occurred still count towards that suspended game when it's resumed. You know, you have a rain delay that causes you to come back and play the second half of that game the next day or the next time they're in town or something. Doesn't happen a ton in the summer, doesn't happen a ton with high school, but we get into some situations where those games matter and they want a winner and we don't have one yet. So they got to come back and finish that game. They don't want to start it completely over because one team's ahead and one team's behind, pretty much in all circumstances. But we have to keep records of all that stuff because that matters. Then when we go to report that substitution, we have a couple different responsibilities for this. One, I always make sure that I communicate it to the other team's coach or bookkeeper, because then that's a direct line of communication. I know what was said. So like there can't be any confusion on who subbed in for who. Because that coach can't come over and say, oh, well, we did this and this and that. And now somehow we've allowed something to happen that can't happen by rule. Whether it's a substitution, whether it's a pitching thing, whether it's the DH should be lost now, all that has to be communicated to the other team. Now, once I have my substitution, if you're working on a field where the official scorekeeper is in the nest, in the announcer's booth, in the studio, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to, like, everybody handles this a little differently. I step out in front of the plate. I'll write everything down. I wave nice and big. I point to the batter, right? And if I do this, we have a catcher substituting, okay? If I do this and point to the batter, that's a batter substitution. And then if I have a fielding substitution, it's going to be up at more than a 45-degree angle towards the outfield. If it's an outfield, right, center, left, right, and arm level, like shoulder level for an infielder. And I'm going to point at the position because I had to clearly communicate that to the person up in the crow's nest who can't hear everything. Now, when I go over to the opposing team, I'm not going to go over to their dugout, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But I'm going to go over and just say, Sanford Larson, 3-hole, number 34, and try to give them as much information as possible. Then I'm going to go back to the plate, put the ball in play, and roll on. Anything different for anybody else? Did I miss anything? I haven't umpired a game yet this season, so I'm trying to just sit there and think through everything that I do in my process.
I think you hit it. I don't know if Dan or Terry does anything different. Everybody's going to keep their lineup card differently. But yeah, as far as reporting substitutions, uniformity really does help. And I think, the next slide here, Connor's going to talk more about handling with courtesy runners, which we deal with a lot at the Class A and high school level. NAIA has the courtesy runner. And I believe amateur baseball in some states have courtesy runners as well. And so I think courtesy runners is more where we can get into the weeds within the realm of substitutions. So Connor, go ahead and give thoughts on courtesy runners.
Yeah. So high school level and below, with courtesy runners, it's pretty much all the same. Has to be a player that hasn't played in the game yet. You can courtesy run for the pitcher or the catcher, provided they're batting, obviously. If you have a DH for your pitcher, you can't courtesy run for the DH. But I can run for the catcher in one inning, the pitcher in the next inning. I can't run for both in the same inning. And this is the high school rule, which is typically what the Legion follows and the lower levels follow as well. So I have a plastic card that I keep my trips on for high school and below. And I also use that for my courtesy runners. So I have a third base dugout, a first base dugout is how it's listed. And then I write inning, number, and then either P or C. Because then I know in the third inning, number 17, courtesy ran for the catcher. Pitcher comes up, they try to sub in number 17 again. I can say, nope, he already courtesy ran this inning for the catcher. And pitcher, so on and so forth. Fairly simple. Some people will keep it on the actual lineup. Not everybody has a book with a plastic card on it. I like that because then I can erase it. Sometimes I'll do inning by inning and I just, number 23, P. Then I erase it at the end, in between innings. But as long as we record it and we track it in our own method, we are fine. Just make sure you know the inning, the number of the player, and who they courtesy ran for. I won't get into the rule on this. Y'all can read the rule. There's a lot of unique situations for it. And we might do another session on substitutions. But track the inning, the number of the player, and who they courtesy ran for. When it comes to reporting them, I am going to turn to the dugout or turn to the press box, say number 13, courtesy runner, right here. So hold a C up because I'm letting them know this isn't a substitution. If I don't do this, they're going to make that a substitution. Now that makes that player in the game legally as a substitute instead of a temporary substitute. And then I'm going to point to the runner because everybody knows where we're going, right? What runner came in, simplify that. Yes, Mike, at the high school level and below, the courtesy runner can run for both the pitcher and catcher as long as it's a different inning. There's a caveat for that in NAIA baseball. I don't know of any leagues in South Dakota, at least, that don't follow NFHS for that. But yes, as long as it's a different inning. Cool.
Connor?
Yeah.
You talked about the C. My recollection is that is only an approved mechanic from if you want to go prim and proper. I believe that is only approved for NAIA use, but my personal opinion is I would strongly encourage everyone to use that mechanic no matter what level. I use it no matter what level because it clearly distinguishes between a courtesy runner and a pinch runner. And so I think we were talking, I don't know if it was at the GPAC meeting or what, but we were talking about some signaling stuff. And, so you do your wave, and if you point at the runner, well, now I've signaled that we have a pinch runner. And so, especially at
because it's the same thing you do when you have a defensive substitution. You point.
The issue can arise when you have a player that's already been removed and re-entered. Now, if I just go here and here, I'll show you on camera, I'm saying that now we have a pinch runner. And so by rule now they have been removed a second time, and so they're no longer eligible to play. But if I go here, here, there, now I've clearly indicated that we have a courtesy runner. And so I really like this signal to distinguish between a courtesy runner and a pinch runner.
Do what you have to do to communicate effectively.
Any questions on courtesy runners as far as reporting, tracking, recording, things like that? I think definitely we can do a clinic on the different courtesy runner rules. And there's some nuances, especially when you start dealing when you throw reentry in there, that can make courtesy runners a little bit more challenging. But any questions as far as reporting, tracking, recording, courtesy runners?
All right. Working the game between innings. What do we do between innings? Where do we stand? That seems like something we shouldn't necessarily need to talk about, but if we talk about it, we eliminate all the confusion, right? So if I'm the base umpire, I'm going to go out to shallow right field. I'm going to catch pitch. I'm going to count pitches. I'm going to think through processes, think about situations that may come up, think about the score, the status of the game, the pitcher that's in. If you have a timing rule, you time. I know some of our amateur leagues have instituted that. But I'm out in shallow right field, probably 5-10 steps off the grass on the second base side. When the catcher or when the plate umpire says, hey, we got 2 left, that's when I typically start jogging over to position A. My biggest pet peeve is when we are waiting on umpires to get into position for no reason. Now, if we have an issue or we're doing a substitution, yeah, that makes sense. That's a different story, right? But we always, as umpires, we always talk about pace of play. How do we make the game faster? How do we keep the game moving? Or we complain about long games that drag on. If we expect them to hustle, we have to hustle. If we expect them to do things in a timely manner, we have to do things in a timely manner. We should be waiting on players. Players should not be waiting on us unless there's a valid reason. So jog over. That way I'm in position when he's getting ready to throw down. Ball gets back to the pitcher. I walk up to my pre-pitch location and I'm ready to rock and roll. As the plate umpire, I always go to the offensive team's dugout. So the team that just got done batting, I stand about 20 to 30 feet from home plate on the team that's coming out of their dugout to go play defense, because I can communicate with that dugout a lot easier. And also that pitcher who just gave up a 4 spot in a 1-run game can't throw some cheap shots at me on his way off the mound. Whereas if he walks right by me, he can say whatever he wants and nobody hears it. At least if I'm away, he has to make an effort to be known that he is coming after me and he's upset with me. That way, when it happens, everybody knows why.
Connor, you make a good point about that pitcher walking off the mound and take a cheap shot. It's a great game management tool because there are certain rule sets, league rules, that if a pitcher or if a player whose last position is listed as pitcher, there's actually an increased penalty in the length of suspension to prevent, walking off the mound, the cheap shot at the umpire. Oh, I'm not going to play tomorrow, so I can sit my 1 game. And so it's a great game management tool that we have for the certain levels and leagues that we would be umpiring in that have that specific enhanced penalty.
Additionally, I can watch the batters as they're warming up. They're in my field of vision. When that batter tries to come up to the edge of the dirt circle to take his warm-up swings, I know because I can see them. I can help make sure that there's somebody out warming up the pitcher. I'm out of the way, and I'm ready to umpire. I'm on the line paying attention, counting pitches. When they get to 2 left, I'll take 2 or 3 steps out towards the pitcher. Hey, you got 2 left. I turn towards the dugout. Hey, guys, 2 left. And then I walk back to the line and then down to clean the plate to get ready get ready to umpire. How we get teams in and out of dugouts is a game management tool, and it really comes down to that professional respect and courtesy. Don't act as if they are holding you up and keeping you from something more important. Act as if what you're doing is in the best interest of the game. You know, I don't say something every half inning. I hardly ever say anything unless I absolutely have to. You know, when that coach huddles up his team, as they come before they go onto the field, I'm like, hey guys, let's go. We got to go. We got to get going. After a couple seconds, if that coach pulls his offensive team together, I'm going to let the batter know a little bit. I might say, hey batter, we got 3 left. Because if that batter's not out getting ready to hit, that's going to slow our game down. And he's going to want to time as many pitches as he can. And a lot of times that'll get him out of the huddle, him or her out of the huddle, and started working on preparing to hit, which makes that process go a little bit smoother. If I don't have a catcher warming up the pitcher's standing up on the mound waiting, I can say, hey guys, can you help Mitch out for me? Mitch just got thrown out at second. You need somebody to warm up the pitcher. Help him out, please. And just communicate that respectfully with them and let them know why. And if you make it, like I said earlier, if you make it sound like it's benefiting them, 9 times out of 10, it will benefit them. But if you tell them why it benefits them, they're more likely to do it. And then the last thing that I see a lot of people do is if you need water, don't go into the dugout to get it. If you have somebody designated to get you baseballs and the teams are providing water for you, hey Logan, every 2 innings, can you just check on me and see if I need some water? Or if I need water, would you mind bringing some out in between innings when you bring baseballs? Perfect. Hey Logan, can I get 3 baseballs and a glass of water, please? And they're 9 times out of 10, they're more than willing to help you out with that. They understand games get hot. They're out there overheating too. So just communicate. And if you have a bottle of water that's yours, or you take a jug, put it somewhere away from the dugouts. Because if you go into their space, bad things happen. If they come out into yours, everybody and their mother sees it happen. And you are protected and you are defendable. So just think about that. You know, don't be afraid to ask first base coach if you're the base umpire. Hey, is there any way I can get a glass of water? Or ask the kid coming out to warm up the pitcher, warm up the right fielder. You know, if you have a bottle of water, when he heads into the dugout and your bottle's empty, hey, can I talk you into refilling this for me? Or can I talk you into throwing this away for me? I don't want to leave it out here on the field. The amount of times where I go work games and there is trash, water bottles, candy bar wrappers along the fence line where I know nobody's been there but the base umpire, it makes us look bad. When a simple asking a favor will go a long ways. So think about that. What we do in between innings can facilitate how quickly our games resume and get played. It also makes the game more fun when there's more action going on. Everybody hates dead time.
Good stuff.
That's all I got for that. I think we can probably wrap up here. I think it's a good place to end. Just talking about the type of people we are on the field, and how we represent ourselves affects how everybody is seen. And I think that a lot of people don't think beyond their impact and their perception of how people perceive them. But if we do things the right way, we act with professional respect for both the players, the coaches, and the environment we are in, we set ourselves up for success down the road. And people that matter notice those things.
Connor, I think you make a really good point here, and I want to echo, what you're saying about professionalism and responsibility. And what you said, it reminded me of, and I believe it was Scott Kennedy who said this. But the way that you act in a game can help you down the line. And what he meant by this was he framed this in the context of working if you're working consistently D2, D1 games or something like that, and you're going down and you're working a JUCO game, you should approach that game as if you're working, a Power 5 weekend, because you might be working in another conference a couple years down the road, and nobody knows who you are. And there's somebody on that bench that, oh yeah, I had him 5 years ago when I was a head coach at insert whatever JUCO. The guy knows his stuff. He's on time. He's on top of everything. He handles his stuff. We didn't have any issues. He hustled. It's the same at high school. You might be working in a new town, or you might be just starting out, and Mark sends you to Elk Point one night, and then a couple nights later you're in Beersford, and it's Elk Point and Beersford, and Beersford's never seen you, and so Beersford's got a new coaches here, so I don't know who it is. Might go to Tyler and say, Tyler, who is this guy? Oh, don't worry, we had him 5 nights ago. Great guy. All of a sudden now you have just bought yourself a little bit of, I'm not going to say grace, I'm not going to say leeway, but you have built yourself a little bit of credibility just based on what that coach has just said about you. Any other thoughts? Is that a hand getting raised? I'm not sure.
It's a thumbs up.
Yeah.
You are unofficially blind.
Lasts for a reason.
Well, why is he hosting this thing in a bathroom? I don't understand, Connor. What have we done with Jacob? He's in the shit.
Let's stop recording here.